Welcome to Active Minds, where we set out to accomplish three things in these conversations: learn from the experiences and perspectives of those who have created their own lanes, explore how to apply it in other areas, and most importantly, move smarter together. So, thank you so much. I've got Luca Netz with me here today. By the way, is Luca Netz your real name?
That's not my real name, no.
Okay. Well, the first thing that stood out as we got to know each other and explore a little bit about it is that, first of all, I love the hustle mentality. I almost feel like you grew up in the same borough that I did.
Yep.
You have accomplished a shit ton of things. Well, we'll get you into, but most importantly, you've gone into the consumer product space. You are at one point were like a young Don King for influencers and helped them make money. You ventured off into the NFT space. You ventured off into, I can keep going, but basically every single time you walked into a room, you brought value and you took your cut and you took that cut and just kept scaling it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, man. So I want to just dive into so much that I feel like I'm going to have to break it into sections. But first things first, I'm going to kind of put you on the hot seat for a little bit. You moved to Miami.
Yep.
You're from LA.
Yep.
Why Miami?
Strictly for kind of tax purposes. I lived here in the past before.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived here a couple years ago with a couple influencer friends of mine at the time. And it was a good experience. I mean, it's a good way to live. It's like a good lifestyle. Granted, it's a little bit hot, but for the tax purposes and the lifestyle that you get, it's probably, one of the best places in the country to move to.
Damn, dude, you just spilled the beans.
Yeah.
That's why I started coming to Florida.
Yeah.
Shit. It's funny. Florida has the most luxury cars registered of any state.
Oh, I believe that. The thing is, it's a little slow paced here, though. I think LA's got like the superficial money where it's just like, trust fund kids, influencers, like a bunch of BS. And then you got Miami where it's like kind of in the middle. Like you've got a little bit of that, a little bit older money, right? Like a little more laid back money. And then you got somewhere like New York where it's like just hustlers and grinders and like super fast paced. It's definitely better than the superficial stuff. Don't get me wrong, but it's like you go to New York and you go to some places and you're just like, wow, like this stuff really pushes the needle. You can chill out here a little bit too much, which is the problem.
I take no offense to that because since moving here, I've had to learn how to drive slower and talk slower.
Yeah.
Because when I got here, I was like, "Taka, taka, taka, taka." They're like, whoa, espérate, stop. And mind you, I speak Spanish, and they were telling me to stop. But before we get into like the fun money stuff, one thing that keeps coming up in conversations is, and I think you just mentioned this right before we started talking, actually, now that I think about it, is when you're sitting in the room with different types of people, there's different types of echelons, the social hierarchy of things, right? You just mentioned that you were in this conversation with basically over $1 billion at the table of net worth.
Yeah.
And one of the things that keeps coming up is, what are the conversations happening at that table?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. Like, once you get to that level of those group of people, like the conversations really become about making more money, right? Like there's really two things. Like how do we make more money? And depending if you have like a high integrity table, it's like how do we make an impact and how do we do something impactful? But most of the time, 90% of the time when you're at the table with like high net worth individuals, most of the conversation, and granted it depends on who you are, some of it can be about women or like other things like that, or vice versa if you're at a table full of women. But the point of the matter is it's like 90% of the time it's about how do we make more money. Like I was at the table and we were talking about business deals and making more money. Mm-hmm. And to sit at those tables, you have to have a unique value prop, right? And so you have to do something very well. You're not going to get to those tables just being a lackey, right? Like you're going to have to bring your own unique value proposition. And so it's just kind of interesting. But most of the time when you're sitting at those tables, a lot of those conversations are what deals are to be made? What's in your pipeline? What's in my pipeline? Where are the synergies? How can we help each other make more money?
So it's like a brainstorm session over cocktails.
Over good food. This was sushi, actually, a Nova Cove. So
nice.
We had some good sushi.
Nice. Speaking of that, one of the things that I would love to dig into. So right now, I don't need to, reiterate what's going on with all of society and economy, inflation and dollars, etc. But specifically, it seems like those rules don't even seem to exist to you. You seem to look at a thing, a market, a problem, and you said before, I like to catch the trends. For example, when you got into the NFT space, you bought something for what, like a little over 2 million, right?
Yeah.
Why did you buy something for 2 million?
I mean, in that
JPEG at that.
Yeah, I mean, in that situation, like I really, believed in what that was supposed to be. So for context, Pudgy Penguins, which is the project that I purchased, 12 months ago was a top 5 NFT project in the world and kind of kicked off this whole NFT craze. It was like one of the reasons why like NFTs really took off the way they did, and it's kind of responsible for why we're here today. And I always knew when I actually purchased it, when I first purchased it, I made the decision to purchase penguins instead of, Bored Apes and CryptoPunks. And at the time, it was a good decision because I saw like the brand potential. Now, unfortunately, the project was started by, guys who had no operational experience, and at no fault to them, they just couldn't make it work. So when the opportunity came to buy it, I was like, look, I've been building brands for the last 5-6 years. I think there's very few people who can do it better, who understand it the way that I understand it. And so I was like, $2.5 million is a small price to pay for the fact that, I think, like for me, Pudgy Penguins is billions or bust. You have Bored Ape with the highest seed round of all time. In 12 months, they raised $450 million at a $4.5 billion valuation. You've never seen anything like that. Like there's never been that type of return that quickly in the history of entrepreneurs and raising money ever. And so you're looking at how these things are valued and how people are looking at them, at least the institutions. And I told myself, I was like, look, I think, me personally, in my gut, I think there's a better value proposition with Pudgy Penguins if you can, turn the idea and turn it into something tangible. And so I told myself, I was like, look, like $2.5 million is a small price to pay for something that was so magical and so impactful to so many people. And, if it works out the way that I want it to, it'll be $2.5 million to make billions. So it's worth it for me.
The worth it to you part, because like one of the topics that and really the central theme of this conversation is that I like something you said. You said the how is not the hard part, which is subsequently the topic that we're going over. You love to catch trends. The growth hacker in me can't help but get a little giddy.
Yep.
And you said also that you were basically faced with the decision: do I get into massive chunk loads of debt, or do I find a way to learn from the best? And I'd love to give you the floor on that one because I'm a huge fan of this exact same person. I have basically behavioral economics is my jam, right? But in your own words, man, who are you listening to? And most importantly, where'd you find them?
Yeah, so I think what you're alluding to is our conversation, I think before the mics might have turned on, where, you and I were kind of just talking about like, what it takes to be successful in life. And back to your point, like a lot of people focus on the how, like how am I going to make millions of dollars? And what people need to realize is that the how comes. The how is actually not that difficult, but many
Spell it out for me, sir.
I mean, I could give you 100 different ways to make $1 million.
That's for later.
For sure. But like the point of the matter is you have, the how's not that hard. People will look back on their lives and realize that there was many opportunities in their life to become really successful. The thing is, what they lack and where a lot of people fall short is their preparation, right? And so you and I were talking, and I was basically telling you I came to an inflection point when I was 16. I said, I'm going to continue with school and not make any money for the next 6 years and try to get a business degree and go into debt to get that business degree. Now, to me, that was completely counterintuitive of what it was to be a businessman. A businessman doesn't go into debt to get a business degree. It doesn't make any sense. And so I asked a really successful person that was close to my network at the time, a dad of my friend who was rich. And I basically asked him, I said, look, like, I got to make money. Like, my mom's struggling. Every month she's crying because the bills are due. She's, I take $3 out of her wallet and she's like shedding out in tears. Like, I can't deal with this anymore. But like, what's really the value proposition with going to college? And he said, look, Luca, 1, if you're not going to an Ivy League school, it's pointless. 2, if you do end up going to an Ivy League school, there's 2 things that you're going to get from that experience. 1, the most important being relationships. And 2, there's a lot of value that comes from, people speaking. So a lot of the times, like if you go to Harvard or Stanford or Wharton or any of the top schools, or really any school in general, you'll have like alumni that comes and like speaks. And he says like, look, I went, 6 years in Wharton, and like the best thing that ever happened that like I was most excited for were these like speeches from the alumni talking about their experience and kind of giving you like, a 2-hour mentorship relationship on stage. But he was like, look, Luca, like the relationships you can't really replicate. You have to go to an Ivy League to do that. That's how you get into the, those type of families and those type of like relationships.
And you were not a legacy kid.
And I was not a legacy kid. So I was like, all right, cool. And plus, like, me and rich kids never got along. Like, I didn't have a white friend until I was like in the 8th grade. Like, I was like the white, I was the white kid who hung out with like, 8th grade was when I had my first white friend.
Where are you from originally?
LA.
Where in LA?
Like Mid-City.
Mid-City.
Yeah.
So what did you have? You must have had a nickname, man.
Little Luca, actually, and I'm 6'8". So it was Little Luca was my thing. And now I'm 6'8". So now it's funny because I'll run into people from my childhood and be like, oh, that's Little Luca. And look, he's so fucking tall.
So they go like this?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
But, like he told me, he was like, look, all of these speeches are on YouTube. So I was like, dude, like, I'll prepare myself. Like, there's certain fundamentals, like, to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to know. Like, you need to be a decisive, like, person, right? So, like, you can train your decisiveness when you go to a restaurant. When I go to a restaurant, I look at the menu for 1 minute. I don't look at the menu for 20 minutes. There's no need to. Like, the food is the food. If I'm going to a restaurant, I know what I want. If I go to a sushi spot, I know what sushi I want. If I go to an Indian spot, I know what I want, right? So, like, you can train your mind, like, subconsciously to start making decisions quicker. So decisiveness is 1. 2, if you're going to be a successful businessman or woman, you need to know how to speak well. Like I have a high school. I didn't even graduate high school, but I can speak. I can sit at a table with a bunch of billionaires or a bunch of guys from Ivy League schools, and I can keep up the conversation. Not only keep up the conversation, but I could probably excel the conversation. Mm-hmm. Why? Right? I have no formal English degree. I could, my grammar is not the best, but the point of the matter is I can hold my own in a conversation. That's so important. You know how many people have been put in front of people and in tables and in rooms with people that could change their life, but because they're so like unsavvy, like, and can't have a thoughtful conversation, like nothing comes from that. Like a lot of my money has been made through relationships. And how do you garner relationships? Well, it's really through your conversation. Like one of the most powerful tools a human in general, or just an entrepreneur has, is their ability to speak and convince. Like, like you can move countries and move nations. I mean, like you look at somebody like Hitler, who was just like an absolute like tyrant and evil person, but because he was able to speak so well, people don't realize this. He was one of the great speakers of our time. Martin Luther King, one of the great speakers of our time, was able to switch a whole racist country and began the process where 30 years later or 50 years later, Obama became president, Yeah. So like the speaking fundamental is so important. People can't go into rooms and have a conversation. So I would read all the time. I would listen to smart people speak. And like all it really takes is listening to podcasts. Like, listening to podcasts, reading books, and like getting through that thought process, and just being an articulate young or older individual, no matter what it may be. But having the ability to communicate well is really important in all aspects of your life. So there's a plethora of different things that you need to be a successful entrepreneur. You guys can quantify that internally listening. Some of these things might be different to others. But the point of the matter is there's probably 5 to 10 fundamental basics that a successful entrepreneur, all of them have in some regard, right?
What would you say is the pattern in those?
I think like I said, decisiveness. Like being an indecisive entrepreneur is tough.
Okay.
Being able to communicate well. Being non-biased, right? So a lot of people are arrogant, dude. Like a lot of people are like so hard-headed and like it's my way or the highway. And I knew that like, there was one speech in specifically with a guy named Steve Schwartzman, Stanford class alumni. And this one really resonated with me, but he was basically telling how you have to take a non-biased approach, right? Like, one of my biggest strong suits as an elite marketer, which is really what I am at my core, is the ability to take off my shoes and put on someone else's.
Yeah.
Like I don't market the products that I like. I market the products that I think other people like, right? Like I'm not, like if I was just pushing stuff that I liked, it'd be a very narrow market, and I have no interest in doing that. I have an interest in touching as many people and selling to as many people as possible. I don't want to be marginalized in any which direction. And so, being non-biased, I think another one could also be like confident, like believing in yourself, as simple as that, as weird as that sounds, but like there's never been an entrepreneur who didn't believe in himself. And I think like, I've been around a lot of people, grew up with a lot of people who aren't anywhere where they want to be. And I think a common denominator is they just give up, right? Like they just don't believe that they can get there. It's, and then I think probably the last one for my 5, and I could go longer, but I'll just probably give 5, is the ability to overcome stress. right? So stressful situations break people, right? And the most successful entrepreneurs are able to overcome stress, and stress doesn't affect me anymore. Like, I can show you screenshots of me losing millions of dollars in a day off like a stock trade, the most ridiculous things ever. And I'll go to sleep sleeping like a baby that night. Like, I am so thick-skinned, there's very few things that can get through me. Maybe it's because of my childhood and how tough it was, or a plethora of different things. But I also knew growing up, like, I used to feel so sorry for myself. And then when I was like 15, I was like, dude, like, you got to cut this. And ever since, like, I just like started persevering through the stress. Like, there's nothing that can crush me. There's no call that can happen. Now I can get stressed. I can get pissed off. Don't get me wrong. But like, there's nothing that's going to come into my phone or into my text message that's going to like completely kill my business or kill my motivation. You know, and a lot of people, and this is where I think most people fail, is their lack of ability to deal with stress, right? The second things get tough, it's stressful, put it down, go get a job. It's easy. A job is not hard, right? It's not that stressful. You go show up 9 to 5, lunch break in the middle, and then you keep it moving. It's very easy to fucking conform to that, right?
It is. Yeah.
Being an entrepreneur, I think the number one thing that you can learn is learning how to deal with stress. Because if stress doesn't defeat you, you'll never lose, right? The second you lose is the second you give up. And the second you give up and the second you lose stems from you being too stressed to keep moving forward, right? And so a lot of people like have really poor stress management and cannot take the beatings. And dude, this game is a bully beatdown, dude. You get beat down every single day, every single week, every single month, every single year in some capacity. And I'll see things that have happened to me that happen to other people, and I just see them destroyed. And I'm just looking at that like, dude, that's happened to me 5 times. Like, why are you like just crying about it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, processors will go down, ad accounts will get banned, and they'll just be like, oh my God. And it's like, no, we're problem solvers. You know, at the end of the day, probably the 6th one is just the ability to solve problems.
That is why motivation is so perishable at the end of the day. Because, I mean, there's like 51 million, I'm making up a number, motivation accounts and motivation this and motivation that, but that's why it's perishable. It's funny that you mentioned the stress part, because one common theme that I keep noticing from other people that I've talked to along my years is, I noticed a few patterns. One of them, almost all of them have a sports background. Almost all of them have a military background. Almost all of us, and I say us because you're included in this too as well, is we come from childhoods that would normally set us up to fail. And it's funny, your approach of nonchalance is not nonchalance. It's just the been there, seen it.
Yep.
Like, I remember when I came out of the military, like, stress levels I was used to was here. Something I did was rescue recovery.
Yeah.
So basically, I my joke for them, like, what do you do in the military? I was like, it's AAA that's underpaid and shot at. Yeah. So when I came out, just like you said, as things happen, I'm like, oh, that's crazy. Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. Oh my God, the sky's falling. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. Nothing's more stressful than that. So thank you for your service, by the way. I didn't know you were.
Oh no, dude, I'm happy to get I got promoted. I'm civilian now.
Nice.
So I'm not government property anymore. But when it comes to your experience, your childhood specifically, I'm pretty sure you kind of came out with a little survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Maybe even some bad habits.
Completely.
How'd you break those, man?
Yeah, so I still haven't broken them as I hit this jewel in my right hand. You know what I mean? Like, there's still certain things I'm stuck with, and it's a constant evolution. Like, life is a mastery, right? And so I haven't mastered every vertical yet, and there's definitely a lot of things and a lot of trauma I still bring with me. Some of them, my insecurity. For example, downstairs, I have a $500,000 truck parked downside, right? It's the shittiest car I've ever had in my life. Rolls-Royce Cullinan. Completely sucks.
It's like
right?
a G-Wagon, no cup holders.
It's a disaster of a car, right? But why did I buy it? Because I'm still trying to prove to all the people that doubted me when I was younger that I'm getting it, you know?
Chip on your shoulder.
And it's a shitty car. I should have never made that decision. To spend $500,000 on a car, I need $100 million. I don't have $100 million, you know? Like, it was just a fiscally irresponsible, stupid decision that was stemmed from my insecurity, right? This is something I still carry with me. Like, when am I going to get over the fact that I have already gotten to the place in life where I don't need to prove myself or try to rub it in the face of people who've doubted me, right? That's a perfect example of an insecurity I'm still dealing with. So,
go ahead.
So it's an evolution, right? Like, in some things you get over and some things you persevere with. But I think like the childhood stuff, you know, I say something like I used to be so mad at my mom for growing up the way that we did. But today I thank her so much because it's like, dude, like, I wanted to be rich so bad growing up, and all my rich friends are doing nothing. They're lost. Like, you know what I mean? And it's no fault to them, right? Like, you can't blame somebody for the situation that they're born in. And honestly, dude, like, if I was born rich, I probably would be chilling too. You know, like, seriously, like, why? Like, dad's gonna die, mom's gonna die one day. I'm just gonna have the big house. I'm gonna have everything. And until then, they'll pay my rent and pay my bills. And, you know, if they're getting 10, 15, 20 grand a month, like, that's money they can spend throughout. You know, it's not like they got to save a little or, you know, budget optimize. And so it's just like, it's an easy life to live and it's easy to coast. So it's like, it's tough. And I've actually been in situations where, like, you know, storks have came by and dropped bags of money, and I've gotten lackadaisical. In 2019, I had just become a millionaire. I almost lost it all because I got so comfortable, dude. I was smoking weed every day. I was chilling. I was, like, you know, making 30, 40 grand a day, like, in my sleep, like, profit to me, you know, like, literally doing nothing. And for people who know the story, they know, you know, but, like, I had this influencer monetization pipeline. I had, like, 50 influencers promoting these stores that I all had 50% of. And, like, on a bad day, we do 100 grand in sales across all the stores. You know what I mean? And, like, the profit margins were through the roof. Like, I was just caking money, but I was like, and then I almost lost it all. I doubled down. I thought I was the hot shit, and I literally just got bulldozed until I was down to my last 200 G's.
So that ego almost fucked up your bag.
The ego will crush you, and it'll continue to, you know, like, life is an evolution. Like, I used to think about it, like, how do people almost lose it all after they make it? You'll be surprised, dude. It's not that hard.
It's not harder.
It's not that hard.
It's easier to lose it.
It's actually pretty easy to lose it. It's not about how much money you have. It's how much cash you're making on the monthly basis. Cash flow is everything. Fuck how much money you've got saved up. That thing can go in a second.
I'm glad you brought that up. And you also brought up the insecurity part. In my experience, when I was working, I was going back and forth to LA for about 2-3 years. And I kept meeting these influencers. And they were, like, hot shit.
Yeah.
And then they lived, like, with the mattress on the floor.
Yeah.
Or, like, I was giving them a ride. Which is weird because, like, I was like, whatever. But you saw that and said, oh, shit. Dude, you got 1 million followers. I feel like you should have $1 million.
Yep.
Why don't we do something together? So back to the how, just kind of appearing, right? You saw them. And you don't have to get any names. Who's someone that you saw a positive transformation once they worked with you?
Yeah, so Supreme Patty was probably the one I'm most well known for. So at the time, Supreme Patty was like the Nelk before Nelk and the Danny Duncan before Danny Duncan. It was getting like 7 to 10 million of views. He was squirting lemons and limes in his eyes for any of you guys who might remember or might know. But, like, dude, that store did tens of millions of dollars, and it was a 70% profit margin business. You know what I mean? And nice. Like and he was like the first case study, truly, honestly. And, like, we worked out a deal where it was like, he went from basically broke to millionaire in a couple months. And everybody was like, dude, how are you making all this money? He was like, yo, Luca's the money man. And we had a deal where he would bring me, like, influencers, and I'd give him 10 to 15% on the store, depending on who it was. And he would just cake back. So he was like my affiliate. And it kind of stems back to the one thing, like, you guys got to understand, like, reason why I was able to be so successful, and it all stems from this, is I made a lot of people a lot of money. Like, I wasn't the guy taking money from the people. I was the guy that if you came and you did a deal with me, like, I was going to make you more money. Like, you come to me to make more money, you know? And, like, that played wonders for my reputation because there's so many people I've made so much money. It's like, and I've never screwed anybody. I've never, like, taken a shortcut. Like, nobody can say, like, I did anything unethical or with that lacked integrity. And, like, eventually, like, that did wonders for me. At this point, I look back at my life and I'm like, how did I make all of the money? Like, 10% of the money I made was based on my IQ, right? My intelligence. The other 90% was based on my EQ, my emotional quotient, right? Like, how I interacted with people in my relationships. Like, all of my money now stems from relationships. Like, even the Pudgy Penguins thing. Like, dude, I wouldn't have been able to buy that if I didn't know that, if I wasn't on a boat with the kid who, like, knew the guy who owned it, you know? Like, at the time, like, there's just so many things that, like, it all came back from my relationships, dude. Like, I've always made an effort to, like, overpay people, pay them well. Like, dude, I've had $1 million locked up in processing, and I owed an influencer 400 G's. Like, dude, our money's locked up. I shouldn't have to pay you. I take that money out of my account, pay them, and I'll fucking foot the 180-day fucking wait for the $1 million to unlock. Like, I always.
You're talking about PayPal, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm talking about, dude. PayPal's actually stole. There's a huge.
It's been 3 years. I'm still waiting for my money.
Dude, I have screenshots of PayPal taking $250,000 and paying themselves $250,000 of my money. I got in a huge lawsuit with them and everything. But
PayPal mafia.
Yeah, it's real fucking mafia shit.
Yeah.
Real criminal shit. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. But the point of the matter is, they say you violate the terms of service, which is a bunch of hokey pokey. But the point of the matter is just like, I like, and people who know me know this, like, dude, I make people money. Like, I change kids' lives, you know, like I have like one of the reasons why I'm on this podcast with you today is like, dude, like one person will listen to this and be like completely impacted. Like that is
the idea.
That's where my relationships stem from, dude. Like people think it's like, dude, that's why you see hustlers, guys who just like Brooklyn hustlers, like dudes who really know how to fucking hustle, come out of here and make millions. You're like, how?
Yeah, dude, Miami's life on easy mode.
Exactly, dude. Like, dude, if you're a hustler, like you can like you don't need to be smart, you know? Like that's what growing up like with like in the hood and like being a part of like, you know, these crews and like these like, you know what I mean? Like I'm seeing, like I saw the hustle really early on. Like, yo, like I saw people really like flip bags and like move packs, and I'm like, oh, like, you know, like
but flipping birds that only goes for so
long.
No,
that's a terrible business. Trust me, I'd make less money if I was a drug dealer.
The bar of entry is so low that it just invites the wrong characters.
Right, but it just shows you that a hustler can do anything, right? Yeah. Like if you gave me a fucking 200-point IQ or, you know, through the roof EQ, I'd pick the EQ any day of the week. What's an IQ going to do? Write a lines of code? I mean, that can be advantageous, especially now with Web3, but
yeah.
You know, like it's not the same, dude. Like being a hustler and being a go-getter and like that confidence and that EQ is everything. Like people always focus on the IQ. Like, dude, I know dumbos who are worth literally dumbos, dude.
Isn't there a book like something about like idiots becoming the most rich people? I
dude,
can't remember the name right now.
I know so many people that you'd be like, you have how much money? And you're like, you are not bright. But it's not about being bright anymore, dude.
But I almost feel like it's an advantage. Oh shit, I almost feel like to some people it's an advantage to be a little dumb because they don't really gauge like I might fuck this up or the ego doesn't get in the way.
For sure, the IQ can overcomplicate things too, you know what I mean? Like you start doing risk reward and you start mapping things out.
Analysis paralysis.
And then again, it depends. Like this is we're talking about entrepreneurs here. If you're a stock trader, like all these things are completely different businesses, right? But like entrepreneurs, like dude, it's an EQ business, dude.
It is.
It's an EQ business. The guy that I was actually sitting at the table with, he was like, Richard Branson was my mentor. And he said, Richard Branson is good at 3 things: raising money, building teams, and instilling confidence. He was like, he sucks at everything else. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And I kind of feel like the same way about me. Like, I don't know about the raising money part. I think there's other parts that I'm good at that, you know, aren't that. Yeah. But like I have like 4 or 5 really good skill sets. I'm pretty deficient everywhere else. Like I'm not the guy to sit 18 hours in front of a computer. You know what I mean? But like I'm the guy to build the best teams. Like I know who works well. I know how to integrate. I know how to bridge gaps. I know how to make deals happen. You know, I know how to convince things in my favor, right? Like I have my strong suits. You just got to lean in what you're strong at and like really nurture those traits.
Speaking of, when you did that Walmart deal,
yeah,
right? You had to put together a team to make sure that it crossed the finish line. And the visual that I get is a very famous anecdote. Whether it's 100% accurate, I don't fucking know. But Ford, when they took him to court and they were asking questions, he's like, I don't know, but if you get me a phone, I'll get you someone who does.
Right.
Basically from his team. So that's kind of the visual I got. When it comes to the Walmart deal, how'd you put it together?
Dude, it's the same thing. I shit you not, I would be a literal asshole if I took any credit for Gel Blaster being in any of the mass retailers in the country. I mean, from the packaging to like the branding, the positioning, the marketing, like granted, like that's me, you know? But like, dude, like Steve, who runs the whole chief revenue officer of Gel Blaster, like, dude, he's the guy. Like, has nothing to do with me. You know what I mean?
Steve.
Yeah.
Steve, what's his last name?
Kid at heart, Steve Sturabinski. He's a beast. And the thing is like, dude, I just gave him ammo. I was just like, dude, here's famous influencers. Here's millions of views. Here's like great ads with tens of millions of views. Here's fire branding, fire packaging, fire positioning, fire website. And it just makes it easy, you know?
Okay. Well, yeah, to you and I it sounds easy, but that's where I'm going to get into. So when I've posed this question in different ways for other people, what keeps coming up is, so the other day we were talking about like the correlation of saturation of content, right? But there's also like this amazing opportunity right now for content, right? Differentiation will not. Why? Fuck it. I'm just going to go. Why are so many influencers, I'm going like this because they're doing great with numbers, but they're not doing good on the conversion? Why is it that you're able to bring them something, everyone makes money, but what they're doing is not making them money? Because I know more broke influencers than anything else.
It's just product market fit. And like a lot of people, like I've actually been pretty public about this model because I don't do it anymore. And a lot of people have tried to replicate it and they just fail. And it's just like not understanding product market fit, you know? Like, and so like, you know, certain influencers cannot monetize off certain products. Like it's very like you have to hit the perfect product.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of goes from there. And then just beyond that, like, dude, like the problem right now with influencers is they're just too much like, it's a team, dude. It all stems back to a team. Like they need to be focused on building the content. Like once an influencer diverts its focus out of the content and starts building a business, things start to fail. But very few people are coming to them saying, hey, let's go build a business, you know? And I just think there's like a unique opportunity right now because content is getting so competitive. The second that you lose a little bit of that touch, it's like you're donezo, you know? And the thing is, to be a successful content influencer in any capacity, whether you're an entrepreneur, influencer, or, you know, a Jake or Logan Paul or a Danny Duncan, it all stems from one thing. And I learned this from Jake, actually. I was at Jake's house in Calabasas maybe four years ago, and he said one word. Because I asked him, I was like, why do you think you made it and everybody else didn't? And it was actually Jake and Logan both said the same thing: quality, consistent content, and the consistency being the most important word. Mm-hmm. It's the consistency. So Jake Paul blew up because he did a vlog every day, right? That was his thing. Every daily vlogs. Same with Logan. That's how they blew up.
It's like the Gary V model, basically.
Yeah, it's the consistent part. So the good content is easy. Everybody can come up with good content. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the consistent part that everybody fails at.
What the hell is content? And I'm being facetious when I say that. Because I the other day I saw a woman who is literally just selfies, and she's like content creator.
Yeah, I mean it can be anything. It can be anything that retains attention. I feel like anything that you produce that retains people's attention. You know what I mean? In some sort of digital realm, right? And I think it's an attention retention game, right? Like a retention attention game, right? Or maybe I got that wrong, but the point of the matter is you get the point, right? Like it's a matter of like, you know, the biggest influencers retain the most attention. It's that simple.
So speaking of that, one, product market fit, and two, the retention and attention. When we were talking before, my background as a growth hacker, when it comes to product market fit, what are you measuring? For example, when we've dealt with anything from B2B SaaS, et cetera, we're looking at click-throughs, messaging, blah, 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 all before we get to the other stuff. If you were to dumb it down, like I'm 5 years old and I'm an influencer with like, I don't know, 500,000 followers, maybe I bought 100,000, it doesn't matter. Where do I start?
Yeah, so that's interesting. And I think it's like, if I'm a guy who does pranks, mm-hmm. like maybe selling some of my pranks that I'm doing on a website, right? My thing is it's hard for me to answer that question because everyone asks me that same question, right? Like, how do you do the product research for something like this? Yeah. And my answer is probably one of my unique skills, my hyper proprietary skills. So it's not a good answer to help people. I have like a gut feeling, dude. Like mm-hmm. I just see somebody, I'm like, that works. Like you would have like it just like I don't know, and I miss on half of them. Don't get me wrong. Like there's been stores sometimes where I had a guy, specifically I remember this one guy. He had 20 million TikTok followers, and dude, I was like, this product and this creative is going to crush. I was like, dude, I just hit a fucking jackpot. I was like, boom, another $1 million a month. Uh-huh. I was like so stoked, and he didn't get one sale. I was like, I couldn't believe it. So you know, some things don't work, some things do. Part of it is luck. Part of it is, you know, catching the trend, innovating. But, you know, it's also the offer and it's also the creative, you know, like it's like Patty, for example, we did free chains, swipe up to get iced up was our thing, right? We did tens of millions of dollars off this. And like, if it was, we tried paid chains where it wasn't free, no sales, maybe $2-3 grand. Yeah. We did free chains, $50 grand a day.
That must have like a little.
It was like I just called it free, and I just made money on the shipping. And I mean, not on the shipping. I made money on the handling.
Yeah.
For the feds.
I mean, I'm not even gonna go off on a tangent with the whole behavioral part of that because they see that they're like, oh my god, I want it. When it comes to, actually, because we talked briefly about podcasts. What is it that you're seeing that podcast is missing that you would like to see more of? Because you seem to listen to a lot of them. You digest. You get something out of them. What are they missing right now, man? What would you like to see? And
it's at no fault to them, but I think just like good guests. Like I don't want to hear about some rookie dude who just made it. Like I want to hear about like the guys who like are really, really doing it. Mm-hmm. You'll see like the best podcasts in the world, Joe Rogan and the Full Send podcast, the two dominating. What do they do better than anybody else? Their guests are just the best. They have the best guests. Like, I don't want to hear about the same shit over and over. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Like if I'm on this podcast, and I haven't done too much due diligence on this one, but I don't want to hear one day about Amazon drop shipping, and then the next day, I don't want to hear about eBay the next week, and then Shopify the next week. It's like the same fucking thing. What is this? 5 podcasts on drop shipping? Like I'm over that.
Yeah.
I want to hear some cool shit. I want you to get the guy who's been at Area 51. You know what I mean? Like that's how you win. Like building it so niche centric is tough. Like building it just like I'm building a podcast only for e-commerce guys, or like even entrepreneurs can get boring after a while. Like, you know, how about just people who just make money? You know what I mean? There's people who make money that are not entrepreneurs. You know what I mean? There's like, bring a scammer on here. Why not? Like that'll get me. I want to watch.
We are in Miami.
I want to watch. Yeah, we are in Miami. I want to hear a drug dealer tell me how he's moving bricks. Like,
Am I allowed to bring a drug dealer on?
You should put a mask on him.
Oh yeah, the voice changing.
Yeah, dude. I'm just saying. but you see, when you look at things like, how do I, like, you're obviously doing this. Your intent should be, I hope, to have one of the biggest podcasts in the world. Well, there's only, like, just like if I have a D2C brand, I want to have one of the best, you know, D2C brands in the world, or the best toy companies in the world, or the best NFT project in the world. I have to look at what the bar is at. Like, why are people succeeding? I know Bored Ape. Why is Bored Ape the #1 NFT project in the world? I'll tell you why.
DJ Khaled.
No, I'll tell you why. They make their holders rich.
Yeah.
That's what they do. If they didn't make any of their holders rich, it would not be where it is. It's not the cultural significance. It's not the art. It's not any other thing. The reason why they're at 100th floor, 80th floor is because they made everyone rich. To myself, I own 5 Bored Apes. I'm never going to sell a Bored Ape. Because every time, I had 10 at one point, and I sold them, and every time I sold one, they literally spanked me for selling it. Because literally every Bored Ape has yielded $1 million in profits if you would have held it since the beginning.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like they punished you to sell it. Like, why would you sell a Bored Ape unless you're desperate for money? Look at what these guys have done for you so many times, right? This is #1 STEM thing. You can say it's a million other things. Great, sure. Like sure, certain catalysts meant certain things and definitely gave them momentum and leverage. But it was the making of the money, because the ecosystem, like all of the people that they've made rich are the people that keep buying their new products. So when they launch land, dude, all the people who they just airdropped, 100 G's in ApeCoin are now taking that ApeCoin and buying the land. Right? Like it's like they're just recycling the money, And so it's like when you look at podcasts, okay, I want to be the #1 podcast in the world. I got to look at all the top podcasts. Like I just said, Full Send and Joe Rogan. Full Send's on fire right now, dude. They just hit you with Andrew Tate and Elon Musk. Like, no shit, you're the #1 podcast in the world. It'd be weird if you weren't. And honestly, they're not good interviewers. Like I was looking at the Full Send and I was like pissed. I was like, dude, some of these kids need to shut up. And like, and this hits close to home because like I know those guys.
Yeah.
And I think they're phenomenal, But like I'm like, yo, dude, come on, stop interrupting this guy. This guy's like dropping some serious gems. Like they're not great hosts. Okay. It's not about being a great host. It's about having, bridging that gap. And they're just proving it. Now Joe Rogan, on the other hand, is a great host, and so that's why he can have, like, he doesn't need to have Elon Musk to get 10 million views on his thing. He can have, whoever. But like, it's so much about who you're bringing on. Like, to answer your question, well, I kind of went on a tangent, but
tangents are welcome. Tangents are welcome, dude.
It's all who you bring.
To answer your question, or at least with the prompt that you threw up, growing up, I was on the borderline of Asperger's, so I had high IQ, low EQ. So then I learned that EQ can be gamified.
Yeah.
And the older I got, I eventually started to notice, oh shit, scoreboard. And really just leading with the same curiosity that I would dive into like a piece of like software or building a car or taking apart the engine. People are exactly the same.
Yep.
And that's really, at least from my lesson that I've learned in life, has been that. Like I've had people that see or learn about my past, or even like my personality type, what they call it, the 4-letter thingamajigs. And they're like, oh shit, that doesn't correlate. Yeah. So my hopes with this podcast is to really dissect how things work in a different way. And it's funny that you mentioned like the types of people that come on. Right now, it would be awesome to get Rick Ross in here, by the way. But one of the things that I would hope to achieve is that I don't want it to be for every single person. So basically what I've learned with working with tech and media and even the fucking restaurant business, by the way.
Yep.
If it's for everybody, it's just crappy. It's not going to work.
No.
I mean, look, even Joe Rogan, he's polarizing.
Yep.
Some people love him, some people hate him, and then the next week they fucking love the guy, and the next week they're like, fuck, It's so funny. It's you know who nails that shit? Andrew Schultz, the comedian. That dude fucking nails crowd control. And that would be actually, it would be awesome to get him on the podcast eventually. But anywho, back to
the polarizing. I mean, who's the biggest guy on the internet right now? Andrew Tate. He's a misogynistic dude. Like, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, like, we can agree with certain points or not, but at the end of the day, like, there's some points that are, like, really egregious there. I'm like, geez, like, young men are, like, leading this guy as their mentor, and, like, this dude is, like, and Grant, like, dude, there's some things that you'll hear the guy speak, and you'll be like, okay, those are facts. Like, some things are facts. I'm not going to say it's wrong, but at the end of the day, like, the dude is, like, treats women like objects. Like,
he does.
How are you going to, like, dude, I grew up with a single mom. That doesn't rock with me.
But you came back to the ego part where you talked about the non-biased part, because how you do anything, how you do everything, right? So in the business world, just like you focus on the personal, you can see someone like Andrew Tate maybe agree with like half of what he says. The other half, you're like, dude, shut the fuck up.
Right.
But you're still able to dissect something out of that.
Yeah.
That right there, how did you get there?
I think it's just like, dude, like, you got to understand, like, everybody has different perspectives, and like, people are not born with their opinions. Their external factors dictate their opinions.
Nature
You put a bunch of Asian and black and white and Hispanic kids on an island, they're all going to come out the same. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing internally programmed there that's going to show them. So when I see Andrew Tate, like, objectifying women, and I'm like, dude, something's happened there. Like, there's something deeper there, like, that's like, just, you don't want to talk about, that like stems for like this, and it might not even be that. It might be the fact that you just grew up in Europe. People don't realize, like, dude, the Europeans and like that side of the world is totally not where this side of the world is. I grew up in LA, right, with a single mom, poor as hell. Like, all the classrooms, like, there was like 9 different races in my classrooms. Like, that's what I grew up with. That's common to me. I look at a black person like I look at a white person. There's no difference to me, you know? Like, so that was my environment. He might have grown up in some, you know, in UK, in some, like, you know, skinhead town, you know what I mean? Like, who knows, you know? Like, I don't know. And so he's a product of his environment. So I don't look at that and be like, that's a fucked up person. You know what I mean? Though I think some of the things I completely disagree with, and I don't think people should be looking at people like that as like role models and mentors, I'm still not going to fault him for it, because he doesn't know any better. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, like, he doesn't have the same experience that I do. I saw my mom get used like an object by men while we were growing up, like, treated like a piece of shit. Like, that's not going to fly with me. I'm not going to do that, you know? But so he might not have that same experience. And so at the end of the day, like, a lot of it is just people not knowing any better. Like, when you look at a guy who's a racist, at the end of the day, like, he's not a racist because he was born and came out the womb a racist. He came out racist because his family before him was a racist, because the people in his community were racists. That's how he became a racist, you know? And so it's like, at some point, like, I don't take people, like, I empathize, you know? And like, I extrapolate the knowledge that I think is applicable to me, and everybody has different preferences and different narratives, but I'm never going to hold somebody or, you know, persecute them for having a certain perspective. Because at the end of the day, like, if it's so left field, something happened, like, throughout your years in your environment that led you to be the way that you are. And if you were with me and, you know, we were like, you know, went off on some retreat for 6 months, I promise you your perspective would be different. And like, we're a sponge, and that's why I think it's so important. Because like, dude, like, again, I don't have any formal education. I'm a high school dropout. Like, but like, when I dropped out of high school, like, when I was working, all I was listening to was these Stanford, Harvard, you know, Berkeley speeches. Like, so I was like, when you're young, you absorb so much better. You're a lot more fluid, right? So like, that comes from that. You're like, dude, how are you so well spoken? And then you like are a high school dropout. It's because like, when I dropped out, I knew I still had to get an education. I still had to absorb information, and I was absorbing information from the smartest people in the world. That helped mold me into who I am. Part of my existence is a derivative of some of the top entrepreneurs, because I've consumed so much of their content, listened to so much of what they were saying, that like, in some shape, way, or form, I'm like a piece of, you know, I'm a piece of Elon or Steve Schwartzman or one of these guys, like, because I've just listened to you guys speak so much, you know?
If you're watching this, basically, I'd love to take almost like what's that, the fourth wall thing, just to take a second to kind of just come back to you in this conversation, which is the reason that I want to stop and pause on this is because the ego bias, you know, all this other stuff is a lot of the reason why, frankly, so many people aren't happy. And when he started going into the Andrew Tate thing, that stuck out to me a lot, because we don't all agree with the guy, but so far, out of every single person that has sat in this chair has brought his name up, because yes, it's effective, the attention retention is working, but most importantly, You're one of the only people that said, I might not agree with everything the guy says, but I'm picking up something along the way. So you're learning something from every single person that you're meeting, hearing. You're essentially creating your mentors.
Yeah, and it's the evolution of man, right? Like you have to be constantly evolving. Like, dude, like I'm like, there's podcasts of me where you'll see me 3 years ago to where I am 2 years ago to 1 year ago to today. Like, it's a constant evolution. Like, if I ever come on a podcast, I'm the same person I was on the first podcast. Like, there's something wrong there. Like, I'm constantly evolving, dude. Like, if not, like, stagnation is regression. You know what I mean? Like, staying the same is just as bad as fucking taking two steps backwards. So it's like I'm gonna pull and things that make logical sense to me. I'm gonna apply it and be like, oh, that's applicable, you know. And you know, at the end of the day, like, I'm not gonna agree with anyone, and where we disagree is like some people won't agree with me. Like, the one thing I pride myself on, though, there's nothing you can't convince me otherwise. Like I could be so dead set on an opinion, but if you lay out the facts to me in a clear and concise way, like, I can be swayed. Like, there's no opinion of mine that I'm stuck to. You know, like I have to be, because if not, like, what's like, the one thing I hate the most is a hard-headed individual. Like, somebody like, and I grew up with that. My brother's pretty hard-headed. Like, I could show my brother a Google screenshot and be like, no, this is the fact. He'd be like, no. Yeah, I'll be like, no, it's right there.
He goes on Wikipedia and
like,
changes it.
He'd be like, no.
To win the argument.
You know, and like, I hate that, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot be that person. Like, that is like one of the biggest faults that most people have. It's like, nah, it's my way or the highway. Nah, I'm right. Nah, like Andrew Tate's misogynistic point of view about women. Yeah, that's right. I agree with that. Like, no, bro. Like, dude, listen. Like, do you not see the writing on the wall? Like, there's just like, at the end of the day, like, we're human. It's about equality. It's not about one being better than the other. And sure, there might be, you know, thousands of years of precedent, but that doesn't matter. Like, we're in a new era, a new generation. We're sending rockets to Mars. Like, dude, you know what I mean? We weren't doing that 5,000 years ago or 2,000 years or even 100 years ago. You know, and so I think it's just like, you have to evolve, because everything's ever changing. And now the information is there's so much information out there that it's like, dude, how can you be the same man that you were 5 years ago? It's like impossible. What are you doing? It's like retarded.
Like a warm blanket, man. In the morning, you don't want to get up. It's cozy.
It's easy.
Unfortunately, you're still there at the end of the day.
It's easy to be that way, but you'll see though. That's the thing, because like, even like Andrew Tate, you'll be like, okay, yo, what's color is my Bugatti or whatever? Like, that's funny, you know what I mean? But
is
like,
that his accent?
But dude, in the grand scheme of things, like, he's not that much of a boss. Like, I know real bosses, dude. Like, making 30, 40, 50 million dollars a year, that's great, and that's like amazing for some people, but like, dude, he'll never make it to like multi-billionaire. Like, dude, no, dude. Like, those guys look at that shit and like, dude, what are you saying? Like, they can't align their brands with people like that. Like, if Andrew Tate ever wanted to raise money, it would never happen. He would never raise money. He would never. No venture capitalist will give that guy money. No way in
he could sell a course on selling a course on selling a course.
Oh, of course. And he already does. He makes $5-6 million a year just on the group alone. A month.
Hey, I can't knock his hustle.
No, you can't knock it, but you just have to see, like, dude, there's levels of this. Like, me personally, like, I want to be one of the great entrepreneurs of my time. Right? Like, that's my goal. Like, I want to be a billionaire. I want the guy who has billions of dollars and can do anything that I want. I can help. If there's an animal I want to save from extinction, I can save it. You know, like, I want to have the ultimate power to do all these amazing things. Like, dude, imagine if I was racist or misogynistic. Like, good luck. You know, like, it's never going to happen. So it's just like one of those things where it's like, okay, he's got his thing, and at the end of the day, he makes plenty of money, and that might be enough money for him, and that's fantastic. But like, for me, it's more about money. It's about like legacy. Like, at the end of the day, humans will evolve to like, we're all going to look at each other like equal playing, like on an equal level at some point. Like, we're already there. Look about how much we went from basically 50 years ago, segregation, you know, sexism everywhere, to like where we are today, to like where we will be 50 years from now. 50 years from now, people will look at the Andrew Tate stuff and be like, yeah, like the final people of that era will be dying. Like, there's maybe 100 more years of that before it's like, no, dude, we're all human. We all bleed red. You pull my skin off of my face and we all have the same anatomy.
I feel from what I'm hearing that you've dove in and a lot into first principles and beginner's mind. At least your approach sounds like it's heavily impacted by that.
Yep.
How accurate am I on that one?
Pretty accurate.
Why beginner's mind? Why first principles? Obviously, the ROI is amazing on it, but what made it stick and constantly coming back to it?
Dude, I really can't tell you. Like I see where I know what kind of mind you have, and unfortunately my mind doesn't think that deep. It just resonates, dude. Things just stick and they just stick, and I don't peel back another layer and be like, why did that stick, or like why did I go that?
It just stuck.
Which I know you do. You probably peel it back a couple times, which is like, per what your background, I could totally see that from you. I don't, dude. I just like, I see something and it's like either I get it or I don't. And if I don't, I'll talk to people who I think do. And thankfully I have a good friend group, of smart, non-biased guys. I like to surround myself around like-minded individuals, which I think is really important, because I think your sphere of influence is, I talk about it on every podcast, but I'll keep talking about it because
what is that?
Your sphere of influence is like everything that kind of makes you. Now, people think their sphere of influence is just their friends, right? There's the common analogy: if I'm around 5 millionaires, I'll be the sixth. If I'm around 5 losers, I'll be the sixth, right? And that people will look at the sphere of influence on that level, but the sphere of influence is actually a lot more interesting. It goes down to the music you listen to. For example, if I'm listening to rap music versus if I'm listening to classical music or rock music, my attitude and mood is in two completely different things.
The lyrics
right?
alone.
You'll think about it, and like you'll think it like am I gonna go, like you think about like gang banging and like no, it's true though. It's like, are gangbangers, when they're about to shoot up somebody's house, what music are they riding to? Are they riding the classical music, Beethoven?
Imagine Mozart.
No, they're not though. They're riding the NBA Youngboy. I'm gonna pop him in his mouth. Hey, you know what I mean? Like that. But there you go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Imagine if that wasn't around. If they were riding the classical music, I bet you shootings would drop 80%. Because it triggers a different thought process. That's their sphere of influence. The food you eat, right? If I'm eating McDonald's every day, bullshit food, then I'm gonna have less thinking power. Like my highest productivity is when I'm fasting. When I don't eat, like that's when I'm on my Super Saiyan mode. Like no one can outwork me when I'm not eating. I can only do that for so long. Sorry?
Intermittent. I'm guessing. Are you trying?
No. I go days. I go
really?
days. So
how many?
Yeah, I've done 16 days without eating before. That gets a little too extreme, but
yeah, my fat ass heard that. Yeah. Like, nope.
No, but like if you really want to see peak performance, you won't experience it the first couple times. But like, let's say you like don't eat for like 3 days. The first time will be tough. Second time will be tough. But like the third time you do that, dude, you'll be like zooted, like as if you just took like 5 Adderalls to the face, but like you don't have the come down. It's complete peak performance. Wow. So like it's like a testament, right? And then like beyond that, it's just like the content that you consume, right? Like if I'm consuming a bunch of content, that's why like who I follow on social medias are so important.
Yeah.
Like sometimes like the content you consume is like everything, dude. If you're on TikTok all day, you know what I mean, consuming like, hot girl content, like dude, you're gonna be a sex addict. You know what I mean? If you're a young man. You know what I mean? And all you're seeing on your feed all day is hot women. Like you're going to subsequently, that's all you're going to think about. That's your sphere of influence, your consumption. And it consists of a multitude of different verticals, some of which I just included. But like, how you consume things is so important. And your sphere of influence includes that consumption. That dictates who you are as a human.
It does.
And like, dude, I have a bunch of things that when I listen to hip hop music, what I'm thinking is completely different if I'm listening to classic rock. It's a completely different Luca. Maybe that might be the Gemini in me. Who knows? But that's just my experience. But I know it's not just me, because I ask people and you'll relate to it. Like it's a completely different ride.
It is.
And so it's just like, it's interesting because I think that's like the most easiest analogy to understand, to like really understand what I'm saying. Just play some music in the car. And record your thoughts in your mind. Drive for the next week, and each day play a different genre of music. And think about the thoughts that you're thinking about. It's insane. It's insane how much your mind will shift just based on the music you're listening to, which leans back to why your sphere of influence and what you consume is so important. If you're consuming a bunch of bullshit all day, right? From the food, from the content, from the music, from the people you hang around, from your spouse, right? A spouse can be a huge killer. Your significant other can completely ruin you, Like eventually, like you will be a product of those habits and a product of your environment. And what, friends is a huge one. When I was 16, I was hanging around a bunch of rich kids, right? I just started making white friends and I was like, oh, this is great. Like you guys are rich, Beverly Hills, like life is good. Went to Nobu for the first time. And like, I'm like, I can get used to this, staying at their nice houses with central air. I didn't have any air conditioning in my house. So it was hot.
You sound like cousin Greg.
Yeah.
Succession.
Yeah, it was hot, dude. So when I had finally got rich friends, I was like, dude, central air conditioning is the best thing ever. I was hanging out with them all the time. But then I realized I started acting like a rich kid. And I was like, wait, these kids can act like this. They can
cannot.
go do drugs and go party and go, hang out with girls. They can do that all day because their life is made. Their parents have their backdrop. And then I was like, oh, for a whole year, I got kind of like brainwashed into thinking I was like this rich kid until I stole money out of my mom's wallet. And I was like, oh, she's crying because I stole $8 out of her wallet for weed.
Damn.
I'm clearly not a rich kid because my rich friend wanted to go smoke some weed and he wanted me to piece up on it. So I had to go steal money from her. I saw her crying. I was like, oh, his mom isn't crying.
No.
Now his mom is giving him 100 without even blinking. And so I was like, okay, I completely cut off all my friends. I was like, bro, I'd rather be by myself. A lot of people are like, well, what if I don't have like successful friends? Or, what if my sphere of influence? Don't hang out with anyone. You hang out, these Stanford and Harvard alum were my friends. These guys speaking, that was my sphere of influence. I removed all of my, gangster friends, skateboarding friends, rich kid. I removed all of that because I didn't want any of that. And I wasn't any of that. I'd rather be alone than be around bullshit. I'd rather be all by myself. Finding pleasure in being alone is important. A lot of people can't do that. Like, dude,
Boom.
A lot of people are very, cannot not socialize and integrate, and that's a fatal flaw,
It's
dude.
like the elevator. They can't get in there without being on their phone.
It's
like
crazy.
They get awkward. I've met, some of the coolest people so far in this building on the elevator. There's a phrase that constantly you're going to hear here. You live here now.
Yeah.
Mejor solo que mal acompañado. Better alone than in bad company.
Yep.
And
I like that one. That's a good one.
it's
you have to text me that.
I will. And at the end of the day, I understand because you kind of have like that insecurity or whatever the hell you got going on. Being comfortable with being alone. I mean, personally, I'm a little biased here. I love that shit. I need it at very least once a week. I know, dude, I piss off a lot of people with that. I need it.
Right? I need it more than once a week, dude. I thrive being. Unfortunately, it was because of I became a product of my environment.
Yeah.
And when I was young, that's how I became successful. So I attribute being alone to being successful. That. So it is a flaw. It can be a catch-22. But dude, I love being alone. I hate being with people. I'm an introvert, as much as people don't like to realize it. I hate public speaking. I hate the whole nine. But I'm good at it, and I impact people with it. So that's why I do it.
So you push through it.
I push through it. I just get over it. Try to make the best
I
of it.
I do. I used to have the bad habit of reading people and then saying it out loud.
Yeah.
And my family had to be like, yo, chill. You can't do that.
Right.
Yeah. Micro expressions, that whole nine. Yeah, I got really into it. And it's kind of a habit now.
Nice.
So as we're wrapping up, I definitely would love to go over a few things, specifically the summarized bullet points so that you can take something with you from this conversation. So if you're listening, watching, taking notes, etc., let's go through it a little bit. So the first thing that we went through in this conversation is that the how is not the hard part. And I love that because a lot of the times when we speak to anybody that's doing well for themselves, there's this emphasis on how did you make it? How did you start? Blah, 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 which is fine. But when the goal is just getting you excited, you ever had good news or something you're looking forward to? Maybe it's going out with your friends, maybe it's a new job, etc. It's like that Will Ferrell sound clip. It gets the people going. That right there is what it looks like when your goal is worth it, right? So one of the things that Luca has identified is if the goal is great enough, amazing, I get the people going, we're going to come together towards a common goal. And then after that, he immediately focuses on what can Luca do for you? Almost like a customer service approach. What can Luca do for you? And then from there, the immediate thing that he goes to, okay, now I'm with you, now you're with me, now what can we do for them? And then the profit starts to come in. And it almost sounds a little bit too simplified when we go through it. But the thing is that at the end of the day, the reason that no one tends to stick through it is because it looks simple. And it can be insulting to people's egos when it is that simple. Another point that we got into very, very quickly, which was making your mentors. So Luca, like myself, were dropouts at different stages of education, but the same thing was present. We looked at people that were doing it better than us, those that were successful before us, and we just focused on what can I learn from that person. It doesn't matter whether you agree with them or not. Another point that he got really hardcore into that I loved, which was psychology is way more important than we give it credit for. I understand that some people out there might not see the value in it, but first principles thinking, beginner's mind. First principles thinking, beginner's mind. I'm going to say it one more time. First principles thinking, beginner's mind. Hone it, Google it, try it out, okay? And another point that he got into that essentially is the reason he's doing what he's doing at the level that he's doing, is that an introvert is able to sit down with people and have a conversation. An introvert is able to come on a podcast and have a lengthy conversation. An introvert is able to set up on a stage. An introvert is able to bring a team together. Are you kind of seeing where I'm going with this? An introvert was able to step outside of his box and focus more on, what is this action going to get me? How to do with that summary? Are we kind of close?
Great. That was a phenomenal summary. We'll wrap this up.
Absolutely. So as we're closing off, I'd love to give you the floor, not to rant and rave, but specifically, I want you to celebrate a recent win of yours. Tell us something you really are proud of that has happened, I don't know, last 6 months, last year.
Yeah, I think the last 6 months, I'm really proud of is just like trusting my gut. Like, dude, you got to understand, like, Gel Blaster is $100 million a year revenue business. And it's a business that's probably going to end up be worth, I really believe it's $1 billion company. And I stepped down from my role there to pursue and take a really big risk. Like, coming in and buying an NFT project post-mint, meaning like there's no like real cash grab opportunity to go make a ton of cash, and leaning into something because I really believed and trusted my gut that I could go and do something was like probably one of my most like recent accomplishments. It really showed my evolution, right? Where it's just like, dude, like, I'm young, here's a risk, like, let me put my money where my mouth is and let me dive into something that I would argue is probably one of the hardest business models to become successful in. And I said, hey, I'm going to go tackle it. And like, I'm proud of myself for doing that. Win or lose, which I definitely plan on winning. Like, that showed that I'm willing to take risks, like big boy risks, and put my money where my mouth is. And it just solidified who I believe I am. And, more importantly, just like really proud of the team that I've assembled and just like put together really an awesome group of individuals to like pursue something that we think not only can make a ton of money, but really impact people in a positive way. And so out of my whole entrepreneur career, like, this is probably one of my like greatest accomplishments. And not to say that the project is that much more successful, it will be. And, I plan on making it to become one of the most successful projects in the space. But like, it just showed that like, dude, I like, it's a public business, it's a publicly traded startup. Like, there's investors who've bought these NFTs that are now waiting for you to do something with their money. They bought in because they believed in whatever vision you're selling. And so I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud that I took that leap of faith and that I leaned into the advice, because a lot of the advice that you'll learn from all of these top, people and podcasts that will speak, they'll always tell you, take risks, Yeah. And I hadn't taken a big risk until Penguins. I've taken some risks and they had failed.
Yeah.
And like, I definitely taken risks, but a $2.5 million risk is no small risk. And I said, look, I'm young enough, like, the upside is there, and so I'm gonna rock and roll and I'm gonna do this thing, and I'm super proud of myself for doing that, regardless of what happens.
My man, thanks for coming up, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you coming out here. So as we wrap up, want to thank you for tuning in. Want to thank Luca for joining us and sharing, not only as an introvert really, but specifically to kind of break down the nitty-gritty and be very open and candid. So again, this has been Active Minds. I want to give a huge thanks to Vegan Gummies and Hands-Free Automation for keeping this machine going. I've been Catriel C. Sarfati, and our goal here is to explore through the experiences and perspectives of those who are creating their own lanes, right? Then break into, how does this apply to us? Where else does it apply? And most importantly, move smarter together. See you in the next time.
Thanks, boys.
Whew. It's one for the books, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were open to more, man. I mean, this was way better than the intake form. Yeah, dude, you had me cracked. I'm never gonna forget that, dude.
Yeah.